ICE, $270 billion blunder. In January 2026, 3 people were shot by federal immigration officers in Minneapolis, Minnesota, during the Trump administration's so-called Operation Metro Surge. Now, here's what happened. Renée Nicole Good was shot and killed by an ICE agent on January 7th while she was in her vehicle. Officials at first claimed she weaponized her vehicle, but, local authorities and video evidence really challenged that narrative. Use of deadly force. Well, law enforcement and correctional officers of the Department of Justice may use deadly force only when necessary. That means, when the officer has a reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to another person. Deadly force may not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect. And honestly, that's exactly the case with Renée Nicole. Julio Cesar Sosa-Celis was shot in the leg by an immigration officer on January 14th in North Minneapolis. He survived the incident, which, according to court documents, actually began with a case of mistaken identity. The whole thing, honestly, just highlights how quickly things can go wrong when someone is misidentified. Jeffrey Pretti was shot and killed on January 24th by 2 Customs and Border Protection agents who were operating as part of the federal surge. Pretti, a local ICU nurse and a lawful gun owner, was trying to de-escalate a confrontation between agents and protesters when he was shot multiple times. He was killed for being a hero. These shootings happened after about 3,000 federal agents were deployed to the Twin Cities, starting in December 2025, as part of what was called Operation Metro Surge. The scale and impact of this operation, well, it really changed the dynamic in the region. Both individuals killed in January, Good and Pretti, were United States citizens. The shooting sparked massive protests and led to calls for the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Following the backlash, Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino was removed from his post in Minnesota for spreading harmful propaganda about the victims of the government violence conducted against its own citizens by the Trump administration, contradicting constitutional rights and responsibilities to lawmakers. The administration's course of reasoning. In exchange for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agents to end their Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, the Trump administration, via Attorney General Pam Bondi, has reportedly demanded that the state agree to 3 specific conditions, which state officials have described as a ransom or extortion. So, the federal government's demands are, first, that state and local law enforcement must surrender all undocumented persons arrested by local police to federal immigration authorities. Next, the federal government requires Minnesota to provide access to sensitive state records, including the full voter registration rolls, as well as data from SNAP, which is the Food Assistance Program, and the Medicaid programs. And finally, local law enforcement must assist federal officials in apprehending and detaining individuals wanted for crimes, specifically by repealing any so-called sanctuary policies that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Minnesota officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison, have refused to comply with these demands, arguing that the federal government is attempting to coerce the state for political purposes. They have filed a lawsuit to halt the operation and are calling for an independent investigation into the recent shooting deaths of 2 United States citizens by federal agents. In response to widespread protests and the legal challenges, Trump has reportedly agreed to consider reducing the number of federal agents, and a top Border Patrol commander has been reassigned. However, the core demands remain. what's the root reasoning? The demand for sensitive state records is widely viewed as a tactic to consolidate federal control over local elections and aid mass deportation efforts. Critics and state officials have described the request as a ransom because it explicitly ties the withdrawal of federal agents to the surrender of private data. So, behind this so-called fishy request, there are actually several key motivations and concerns. The Department of Justice claims it needs full, unredacted voter rolls, including Social Security and driver's license numbers, to make sure Minnesota is, properly cleaning its lists of ineligible voters. However, federal courts in both California and Oregon have already rejected this approach, calling the requests, unprecedented and illegal. State officials believe the federal government actually intends to cross-reference voter rolls with immigration databases to hunt for non-citizens. This move, they worry, could lead to the purging of eligible voters and, honestly, the intimidation of immigrant communities. So Vice President J.D. Vance has confirmed that the administration actually wants to use Medicaid and SNAP or food stamp records to track down the last known addresses of undocumented individuals. The goal here is to help ICE, make arrests. By demanding access to these records in exchange for ending what's called Operation Metro Surge, the administration is being accused of, using violent federal operations as leverage. The idea is to pressure so-called blue states to drop their sanctuary policies and, basically, hand over private data. Advocates are really concerned that all of this is part of a broader campaign to build a national database for political revenge. There's also a fear that it could actually undermine the integrity of the upcoming 2026 midterm elections. Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon has refused to comply, stating that the law does not grant the federal government authority to obtain this private data on millions of United States citizens. So, what's the effect of granting sensitive voter rolls? Demanding full, unredacted voter rolls is seen by many experts as a significant threat to voter privacy and the stability of the upcoming 2026 midterm elections. Large-scale disenfranchisement could be on the horizon. The federal government plans to cross-reference voter rolls with other databases to flag so-called issues and give states 45 days to clean the rolls. This rapid purging process could violate federal laws that protect voters from being removed too close to an election. There's a chilling effect on turnout. Fear that personal data, like Social Security and driver's license numbers, is being weaponized or misused by the federal government can, really discourage people from registering or even showing up to vote. So, advocates are warning that naturalized citizens and communities of color are, especially at risk of being incorrectly flagged as non-citizens, and that's mostly because of outdated federal data. Creating a centralized national database with sensitive personal information on millions of Americans, it really makes that data a prime target for hackers. And there's also the risk of potential misuse for political gain. There are, honestly, some deep concerns that this data could be manipulated to support false claims of widespread illegal voting, and in turn could be used to challenge election outcomes. States that comply with these demands are facing potential lawsuits from voter advocates for violating state and federal privacy laws.